It was early November in Chicago, and the city felt colder than usual, not just in temperature, but in spirit. The sky was a pale gray, thick with heavy clouds that seemed to press down on the city like a warning. The wind cut through the streets like it had purpose, biting through coats and scarves, making people rush along the sidewalks with hunched shoulders and lowered eyes. But Evelyn wasn't rushing. She walked slowly, almost mechanically, as if each step required thought. Her coat was a size too big, borrowed from a neighbor who wouldn't ask questions. The sleeves swallowed her hands, but that didn't matter. Her fingers were numb anyway. What mattered was the little girl walking beside her. Iris was 6. Her dark brown curls bounced with every step, and her eyes, wide, bright, full of unspoiled joy, searched the world around her with wonder. She didn't notice her mother's silence. Not yet. She was too busy singing softly to herself, skipping every few steps, and holding Evelyn's hand like it was the only thing in the world that could keep her safe. "Where are we going, Mommy?" she asked, without stopping. Evelyn's jaw clenched. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tightened her grip around Iris's small hand and kept walking. Not too fast. She didn't want to scare her. Not yet. Every block they passed felt heavier. The sounds of the city, cars, sirens, conversations, the hum of life, faded into a dull buzz in the background. Evelyn's focus was narrowing. Her chest was tight. Her eyes were hot. And her mind was screaming. Only hours ago, she had been in their small, one-bedroom apartment on the south side. The heat had been cut off 2 days earlier. The fridge was nearly empty. The last check from the diner came late and was already gone. Rent, medicine, school shoes, groceries. She hadn't told Iris that they were being evicted in a week. She hadn't told her about the calls, the letters, the threats, or about the man who used to say he loved them both and now wouldn't even say Iris's name. Gregory had made it clear, "You either disappear with her or I do, and if I do, you won't like how it ends." Evelyn had begged him to change his mind, but Gregory didn't make empty threats. She had seen what he was capable of. She had the scar on her right wrist to prove it. So she did what any mother would do. She sacrificed herself. They turned a corner and suddenly, there it was, St. Adelaide Home for Children. A tall, aging building made of red brick, with narrow windows that looked like they hadn't opened in years. The iron gate in front was old, but still solid. The words St. Adelaide were carved into a stone slab above the door, faded with time and soot. The building wasn't ugly, but it wasn't welcoming either. It looked tired, like it had seen too much and stopped pretending otherwise. Iris stopped skipping. Her voice faded mid-hum. She tilted her head, studying the place. "Is this it?" she asked. Evelyn didn't answer. She couldn't. The orphanage sat in the middle of a quiet block, surrounded by nothing but a few parked cars and bare trees shaking in the wind. No kids were playing outside. No laughter. No signs of life. Just silence. Evelyn felt sick. She crouched down beside Iris, pulled her close, and held her tightly. Too tightly. Iris squirmed a little, but didn't pull away. "I need you to be strong today, sweetheart," Evelyn said, her voice low, shaking. "Can you do that for me?" Iris nodded, confused, but obedient. Evelyn stared into her daughter's eyes, trying to memorize every detail. Her lashes, her dimples, the tiny birthmark near her left ear. She wanted to freeze this moment, hold onto it forever. But time wouldn't stop for her. The clock kept ticking. Her chest burned with panic. There was still time to run. Still time to turn around, go back to the apartment, figure something else out. But then she remembered the last time Gregory got angry. The way he grabbed Iris by the arm. The way Iris screamed. The way Evelyn froze. No, there was no going back. She stood up, walked to the intercom, and pressed the button. Her hand trembled. Her whole body did. A crackled voice came through. "Yes. I'm here to speak with Director Lohan," Evelyn said, barely loud enough to be heard. "I called earlier." A pause. Then, "Come in." The gate buzzed. Evelyn pushed it open with her shoulder, and they stepped inside the courtyard. The door creaked open. A woman in her late 50s, tall, thin, and serious-looking, stood in the entryway. Her graying hair was pulled back into a bun. Her expression was unreadable. "Ms. Santos?" she asked. Evelyn nodded. "Follow me." They walked down a narrow hallway. The walls were beige, the floor scratched linoleum. Everything smelled like bleach and old paper. They passed rooms with closed doors, a few muffled voices behind them. Iris held tightly to her mother's coat now. The skipping had stopped. Inside the office, the director gestured for Evelyn to sit. Evelyn lifted Iris onto the chair beside her and then slowly sat down. "Are you sure about this?" the woman asked gently. Evelyn stared at her daughter. Her chest felt like it was imploding. "No," she whispered. "But it's the only way." She handed over a small folder. Inside were copies of Iris's birth certificate, medical records, and a letter she had written the night before. In that letter, she explained everything. Why she couldn't stay. Why she had to protect her. Why she hoped one day Iris would forgive her. The director nodded, solemnly. "You'll have 5 minutes to say goodbye." 5 minutes. Evelyn turned to Iris, who was now looking at her with wide, confused eyes. "Why do I have to stay here, Mommy?" Her voice was so soft, so trusting. Evelyn broke. Tears poured down her cheeks as she leaned forward and wrapped Iris in the tightest hug she had ever given. She kissed her face, her hands, her hair. She whispered everything she could think of in her ear. How much she loved her, how proud she was, how brave she had always been. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "You're going to be safe. That's all that matters." And then she stood up. The director placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the door. Iris stood from the chair, confused. "Mommy!" Evelyn didn't turn around. "Mommy!" She stepped out into the hallway. "Mommy, wait! Mommy!" The door closed. Evelyn collapsed against the wall outside, hand over her mouth, sobbing into her own coat. And inside the office, Iris stood alone, her hands pressed to the door, calling for someone who was already gone. If you like interesting stories, leave your like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our content. And let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. We'd love to hear from you. 3 days had passed since Evelyn left Iris at St. Adelaide. 3 days without hearing her voice, without feeling her tiny fingers wrap around hers, without that smell of bubblegum shampoo or the sound of her laugh echoing down the hallway of their old apartment. 3 days that felt like drowning slowly while the world moved on above water, unaware, unaffected. Evelyn was staying at a rundown motel on the edge of Cicero, far from the neighborhood where she once built a life. The kind of place where no one asked questions and no one looked you in the eye. The curtains were stained, the mattress smelled of bleach and mildew, and the faucet only gave hot water if you kicked the pipe under the sink. It didn't matter. She wasn't there to be comfortable. She was there to disappear. On the nightstand sat an old flip phone, a burner she'd paid for in cash. She stared at it constantly, even though no one had the number. Her real phone was gone. She'd smashed it the day she left the apartment, terrified Gregory might track her. And still, deep down, a part of her hoped Iris might find a way to call. The weight of what she had done crushed her. Not in waves, in silence. It wasn't the kind of guilt that screamed. It whispered, constantly, in every quiet moment, in every breath. Evelyn hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands trembling from coffee and fear. Each morning she woke with a sudden gasp, convinced it had all been a nightmare, until she opened her eyes and remembered she was alone. Completely, irrevocably alone. On the fourth morning, as the sun barely cracked through the stained blinds, there was a knock on the door. 3 sharp knocks. Evelyn froze. She hadn't told a soul where she was. Not even her sister in Miami. Not even her closest friend, Rachel, who had begged her for weeks to get away from Gregory. She waited, heart pounding, holding her breath. Another knock. Then silence. She moved quietly toward the door and peeked through the cracked peephole. The hallway outside was empty. Her throat dried. Her instincts screamed. She opened the door just a few inches, and then froze. Lying on the floor was a small, unmarked envelope. She stepped out slowly, picked it up, looked in both directions, but no one was there. Inside the envelope, a photo. It was Iris, taken that morning. She was standing in the orphanage courtyard, in her little coat, hair tied up with the same pink ribbon she wore the day Evelyn left her. Her face looked different. Her smile wasn't there. Her eyes looked older, not afraid, but not the same. There was something else in the envelope. A note, typed, plain white paper. You have 1 week. Make peace with your choices. We'll be in touch. No signature. No contact number. Evelyn's hands shook as she dropped into the chair by the window. Her breathing became shallow. She looked around the room, suddenly sure someone was watching. She pressed the photo to her chest and cried, her entire body trembling. But her mind was already racing. What did this mean? Who sent it? Gregory? Someone else? Was Iris in danger? Was this a warning or a message? Then came the realization that paralyzed her. Someone had eyes inside St. Adelaide. She grabbed her coat and keys. She couldn't just sit there. Not after that. She had to see her daughter. Just once. Just to make sure she was okay. Just to look at her from a distance and know she was safe. It was reckless. Dangerous. But there was no force on earth stronger than a mother's fear. She took a bus across town. 2 transfers. She kept her head low the entire time. Every face felt like a threat. Every man in a black coat felt like Gregory. She reached the block around noon, just as the kids at St. Adelaide were coming out for their midday break. Evelyn stayed hidden behind a parked van across the street. And then she saw her, Iris, sitting on a bench by herself, holding a worn stuffed bunny Evelyn had packed in her bag the night she left her. She looked small, quiet, still. The other children ran past her. Some played tag, others sat in groups. But Iris stayed still, watching, like she was waiting for something, or someone. Evelyn's breath caught. She was there, alive, unharmed, but something in her posture. Something was off. Suddenly, a man appeared behind Iris, tall, wearing a dark overcoat. He leaned down, whispered something in her ear. Iris didn't flinch, didn't turn. She just nodded. Then he walked away. Evelyn's stomach dropped. She had never seen that man before. He wasn't a staff member. He didn't belong there. She reached for her phone, forgetting, for a moment, it was just a burner with no contacts. She snapped a picture of him from the distance. Blurry, but maybe enough. Evelyn turned to leave, then paused one last time. From across the street, Iris looked up. Their eyes met. It was only a second, but Evelyn knew. Her daughter recognized her, and for the first time since she left her there, Evelyn saw a tear roll down Iris's cheek. Evelyn didn't return to the motel that night. After seeing the man whisper into Iris's ear, something in her shifted. It wasn't panic. It was colder than that. It was focus. A terrifying, urgent clarity that overpowered exhaustion and fear. She no longer had the luxury to collapse. Someone was watching her daughter. Someone who didn't belong there. And someone had made sure Evelyn knew it. She couldn't report it to the police. She had no credibility, no proof of guardianship anymore. And after years of dealing with Gregory's manipulation, she knew how easily the truth could be twisted against her. That kind of man didn't need to raise his voice to ruin someone. He just had to whisper to the right person. By nightfall, she was sitting inside a 24-hour diner on the north side, sipping cold coffee from a cracked mug, staring down at the blurry photo of the man she had taken earlier. She'd enlarged it on a borrowed laptop at a public library, sharpening the image as best she could. The result wasn't great, but it gave her something, a partial profile. Thin face, sharp jawline, a mole near his temple, a faint scar on his lip. She stared at the face for hours, trying to remember where she might have seen him before. Was he connected to Gregory? Or worse, was he from Gregory's past? One of those friends Evelyn was never allowed to speak to? She felt like she was walking through a maze in the dark. Her eyes wandered to the notebook she kept by her side. In it, she had started building a map. A crude web of names, dates, guesses. And in the middle of that web, underlined 3 times, was the word Iris. She was the center of it all. The one innocent piece in a game Evelyn didn't understand yet. But someone did. Someone who had access to the orphanage. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. At around 3 in the morning, a waitress named Doreen came by to refill her coffee for the 5th time. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks," she said softly. "I haven't," Evelyn replied without looking up. Doreen didn't ask questions, just nodded and walked away. She'd seen that look before. Broken, hunted, barely holding on. Chicago was full of women who'd survived worse than they could ever explain. By the next morning, Evelyn was back near St. Adelaide, this time watching from inside a laundromat across the street. She needed answers, and she needed someone on the inside. That's when she noticed her. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, faded scrubs, thick glasses, hair pulled into a rushed bun. She exited the orphanage through the side door, holding a clipboard and a paper bag with what looked like a child's breakfast. Evelyn felt her heartbeat quicken. She knew that type. Low-level staff, underpaid, overworked. Probably the only one in the building who still gave a damn about the kids. Evelyn followed her. Not aggressively, not close. Just enough to keep her in sight. The girl turned onto a side street and entered a bodega, where she bought a coffee and a pack of crackers. She sat on the curb outside, scrolling her phone, barely blinking. Evelyn hesitated. Her hands were sweating. She'd never done something like this. She approached slowly, cautiously. "Hey," she said gently. The girl looked up, startled. "I'm sorry to bother you," Evelyn continued. I think you work at St. Adelaide. The girl hesitated. Who's asking? I'm not a reporter. I'm not with the state. I'm a mother. That changed something. The girl lowered her phone. I'm Maya, she said slowly. I'm a case aide. I only work mornings. Evelyn sat beside her. I'm Evelyn. My daughter's name is Iris Santos. She's 6. I left her there last week. Maya looked away. They don't usually let parents check in after placement. I'm not here to fight for custody. I'm not here to take her back. I just need to know if she's okay. There was a long pause. Maya shifted on the curb. She's quiet. Doesn't talk much. Carries that bunny around everywhere. But she doesn't cause trouble. No tantrums. No tears. It's like she's waiting for something. Evelyn swallowed hard. Has she had visitors? Maya looked surprised. Not that I know of. There was a man. Tall. Dark coat. Scar on his lip. I saw him with her yesterday. Whispered in her ear. Maya's brow furrowed. That's not possible. We keep strict visitation logs. No one's allowed near the children without clearance. Evelyn shook her head. I saw it. He was inside the gates. Maya's expression shifted. Something clicked. Her face went pale. What? Evelyn asked. There's been a guy hanging around lately. Outside. Never came in. But last week I saw him talking to Mr. Haver, the night security guard. I asked who he was. Haver said he was maintenance contractor. Is he? We don't have outside maintenance. Everything's in-house. It didn't sit right with me, but when I brought it up, the director brushed it off. Evelyn leaned in. Can you find out who he is? Please. Maya looked conflicted. I could get fired. My daughter could be in danger. There was a silence between them, broken only by the distant sound of buses and morning traffic. Maya finally nodded. I'll see what I can find. As Evelyn watched her walk back toward St. Adelaide, a new feeling bloomed in her chest. Not relief. Not hope. Something heavier. The moment she saw that man with Iris, Evelyn knew she had started a countdown, and she had no idea how much time was left. Maya didn't show up the next morning. Evelyn waited across the street for hours. Numb fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee she could barely afford, eyes locked on the side door of St. Adelaide. People came and went. Delivery drivers, staff members, children shuffling in lines. But not Maya. By noon, Evelyn's chest was tightening with something that went beyond worry. It was dread. The kind that seeps into your skin and settles deep, telling you without words, something isn't right. She finally crossed the street and walked past the orphanage gates like she had the right to be there. Her posture steady, eyes focused. The front desk staff barely looked up when she passed. They didn't know her. That was the gift of being invisible. But she knew the layout now. She had studied it for days. She moved through the side corridor toward the break room where Maya said she kept her coat and phone during shifts. It was empty. No jacket. No bag. No trace of her. Just an untouched apple on the counter and a half-empty water bottle with a lipstick stain on the rim. Evelyn felt a chill rush up her spine. She left quickly, heart pounding. Back on the sidewalk, she took out her burner phone and did something desperate. She searched for Maya Cortez, Chicago. There were dozens of results. She tried adding St. Adelaide. One match popped up, an old community newsletter from 2 years ago, A photo of Maya smiling next to a group of volunteers. Underneath, Maya Cortez, new child welfare aide, joined St. Adelaide with a focus on trauma-informed care. Evelyn stared at the photo for a long time. Then she took the bus to the address listed at the bottom of the article, an old apartment building in Pilsen. She knocked 3 times. Nothing. A neighbor peeked from across the hall. An older man in a white tank top. "She's not home," he said. "Do you know if she's okay?" He squinted at Evelyn, then shrugged. "Didn't see her since yesterday morning. Thought she went to work. Quiet girl. Keeps to herself." Evelyn thanked him and turned to leave, but something made her pause. She glanced back at the door. There, just at the base of the frame, was a slip of paper, barely visible, folded once, shoved between the crack. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. There were no words, just a symbol, drawn in black ink, a small, rough circle with a line through it. It meant nothing to her, but it meant something to someone. She folded it, tucked it into her coat, and walked until her legs couldn't carry her anymore. By nightfall, she was back in her motel, pacing the room like a caged animal. Someone had gotten to Maya. The girl had barely spoken to her, and yet it had been enough. Enough to make her disappear. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the photo of Iris again. Her daughter's eyes seemed to ask the question she couldn't answer. Why are they watching me? Suddenly, her burner phone vibrated. Unknown number. Her breath caught in her throat. She answered. At first, silence. Then, a voice. Distorted. Male. You were warned. She stood up, gripping the phone. What do you want from me? You left her. That was your choice. I did it to protect her. Then why are you still following her? Evelyn's heart dropped. They knew. They'd seen her. Watched her watching. What are you doing to her? She asked, voice shaking. Another pause. Then a whisper. She's special. And the line went dead. Evelyn stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her heart racing in her chest. Special. She sat back down, trying to breathe, her mind flashing to memories she hadn't thought about in years. Iris had always been different. Quiet. Observant. Too aware of things most kids ignored. There were moments Evelyn couldn't explain. Times when Iris seemed to know things before they happened. Not in a dramatic, movie-type way. Subtle. Eerie. When her father had his accident, Iris had woken up crying minutes before the phone rang. When Evelyn lost her job, Iris had drawn a picture of them crying in an empty apartment days before the eviction notice came. Back then, Evelyn had chalked it up to coincidence. Imagination. That strange mother-child connection people liked to romanticize. But now, she opened the folded paper again. That strange circle with a line. She didn't know what it was, but someone did. And they wanted her daughter, not because of who she was, but because of what she might become. The following morning, Evelyn woke up in a panic. She had fallen asleep sitting upright in the corner of the motel room, still wearing her coat, clutching the burner phone like a lifeline. Her neck ached. Her legs were numb. And in her dreams, she kept hearing Iris call her name from behind a door she couldn't open. By the time she stumbled into the bathroom to splash cold water on her face, the fear had hardened into something sharper. Resolve. She couldn't rely on chance anymore. She needed help. Not from the police. Not from the state. But from someone who understood how shadows moved in a city like Chicago. Someone who knew how to follow the kind of people who made children disappear and left no trace behind. Her mind landed on one name: Rachel Vasquez. They hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Not since Evelyn had pushed her away, the same way she pushed everyone away after Gregory's threats escalated. But Rachel was the kind of person who didn't forget people. She'd been there through Evelyn's pregnancy, through Iris's birth, through the worst of Gregory's manipulation. And before all that, she'd spent almost 8 years as an investigative reporter for the Chicago Ledger before she left journalism and started working with a non-profit that handled trafficking and abuse cases. Evelyn pulled out the burner phone and stared at the screen. She didn't have Rachel's number anymore, but she remembered the name of the cafe where Rachel still worked part-time on weekends. El Molino, a quiet place in Little Village where the smell of fresh conchas always drifted into the street. An hour later, Evelyn walked through the door, the smell of coffee and sweet bread hitting her like a wave of nostalgia and regret. Behind the counter, there she was, Rachel, now with her hair cut short, wearing a worn apron and no makeup, just like always. Her eyes locked onto Evelyn the moment she walked in. Rachel's expression shifted immediately, part shock, part concern. She didn't speak. She just walked around the counter, pulled Evelyn into the hallway near the storage closet, and closed the door behind them. "You look like hell," she said, voice low. Evelyn nodded. "I deserve worse." Rachel folded her arms. "Is it about Iris?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "She's in danger, and I don't know who to trust." Rachel didn't ask questions. Not yet. She guided Evelyn to the back office, locked the door, and sat across from her. For the next 30 minutes, Evelyn told her everything. From the night she left Iris at St. Adelaide to the strange man, the photo, the call, and Maya's sudden disappearance. Rachel didn't interrupt. She listened the way she always had, completely, quietly, like she was storing every word like evidence in her mind. When Evelyn finally stopped, Rachel leaned back and said one word: "Gregory." Evelyn nodded. "I don't have proof, but I know his fingerprints are on this." Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a thin black notebook. "Then we start with him." They spent the next hour gathering what little Evelyn remembered. Old phone numbers, names of Gregory's friends, addresses of bars and offices he used to frequent. Evelyn even remembered the name of a club he had been obsessed with, a private place downtown called the Lantern Room, where high-profile men did things they didn't want seen in daylight. Rachel was already making calls. She still had contacts inside the ledger, people who owed her favors. She also had access to a private background check system through the non-profit. "We're not just looking at Gregory," Rachel said. "We're looking at anyone who would benefit from using your daughter. This goes beyond a custody battle." Evelyn pulled out the folded note with the strange symbol. Rachel studied it carefully. "It's not gang-related. Looks more like an old-world mark. Possibly esoteric. Ritualistic." Evelyn shivered. "You think it's cult-related?" "I don't know. But you don't use symbols like this unless you want to send a message. Or mark someone." Evelyn looked away. "They said Iris was special." Rachel's face hardened. "What did they mean?" "I don't know. But she's always felt things. Known things. Things no one could have told her." Rachel closed the notebook. "Then we need to find out what they know that we don't." That night, Rachel brought Evelyn to her apartment, a small 2-bedroom above a flower shop in Logan Square. It smelled like incense and old books. Rachel gave her the guest room, a hot shower, and a bowl of arroz con leche. It was the first time in days Evelyn had felt remotely safe. At around 2 in the morning, Evelyn got up to use the bathroom. As she passed the living room, she saw Rachel still awake, sitting on the floor surrounded by notes, documents, and her open laptop. The only light came from the screen. Evelyn leaned against the doorway. "You should sleep," she said softly. Rachel looked up. Her eyes were tired, but burning with focus. "I found something." She turned the screen toward Evelyn. It was a security photo, a grainy black and white image of the same man who had whispered into Iris's ear, entering a government building in Hyde Park 3 weeks ago. He wasn't alone. He was with someone Evelyn recognized immediately, even though she hadn't seen her in years. It was Gregory's mother. Evelyn's blood ran cold. "What the hell is she doing with him?" she whispered. Rachel zoomed in on the image. "That's what we're going to find out. Because if she's involved, this isn't just about control or abuse." Evelyn stepped closer to the screen. Her heart was pounding in her ears. This is about something much darker. Evelyn hadn't seen Gregory's mother in nearly 5 years. Not since the day she stormed out of their apartment after a vicious argument, the kind where words cut deeper than knives. The woman had always resented her. From the moment Evelyn got pregnant, she made it clear. Iris was a mistake, an anchor, an obstacle. Her exact words were, "That child will bring nothing but suffering. You'll see." At the time, Evelyn thought it was just bitterness. A woman who couldn't control her son anymore, lashing out at the one person who could. But now, seeing her in that surveillance photo, smiling beside a man who had whispered into Iris's ear, it didn't feel like bitterness. It felt like intent. It took Rachel only 2 days to confirm the man's identity. His name was Daniel Reyes, 42 years old, former contractor for a now-defunct private security firm. No criminal record, but enough sealed court documents and redacted government filings to raise red flags in every direction. The company he worked for, Nox Terra, had quietly provided special services to political clients across the Midwest before it folded 4 years ago under a scandal no one fully understood. Whistleblowers vanished. Testimonies were suppressed. Rachel read the files out loud to Evelyn that evening, while a storm thundered outside, rain pounding against the windows of her apartment. "He worked in extractions and relocations," Rachel said, "but not military. Private targets. Kids, mostly. Custody disputes. Underground networks. The kind of jobs people pay for when they want something done quietly." Evelyn felt the nausea rise in her throat. "He's a mercenary. Worse," Rachel said. "He's a cleaner. A ghost." They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, Evelyn held her face in her hands, trying to process how far this had spiraled. "You said Gregory's mother believed Iris was dangerous," Rachel finally said. "Why?" Evelyn looked up, her voice barely audible. "She used to say things about bloodlines, about Iris being tainted. Said there were things in their family that needed to stay buried." Rachel leaned in. "Like what?" She never said exactly, only that Gregory was different, that he used to see things when he was a boy, hear things. Rachel blinked. "And Iris?" Evelyn hesitated. Her mind drifted back to the night Iris woke up screaming during a lightning storm, pointing at the corner of the room where nothing was there, until their cat leaped up and hissed at the empty space. To the time she drew a picture of a woman drowning in a lake, days before a local teacher was found dead in one just like it. "I think she inherited something," Evelyn said. "Something neither of us understands." Rachel sat back, absorbing the words. The storm outside deepened. "You think they want her for that?" Rachel asked. "I don't know what they want, but I know they're not trying to protect her." That night, while Rachel slept, Evelyn sat in the guest room alone with the window open, listening to the wind howl down the alleyway. She held the only photo she still had of Iris, the one from the envelope. She stared at her daughter's eyes. Something about them felt haunted, like she knew too much for someone her age. The next day, Rachel called in a favor from an old tech friend who specialized in surveillance analysis. Using timestamps, street cameras, and traffic footage, they traced Gregory's mother and Daniel Reyes to a location on the outskirts of the city, a place called the Silver Veil Foundation, registered as a private research facility. Evelyn and Rachel drove out that afternoon. It wasn't a building. It was a compound. Surrounded by pine trees and iron fencing, Silver Veil sat about an hour from downtown Chicago, disguised as a rehabilitation center for children with exceptional needs. But the windows were blacked out. The gates were covered in security cameras, and the entrance required a coded badge. No signs, no traffic, no laughter. It looked less like a school and more like a prison in the woods. They parked at a distance and watched. 4 hours. Just before sunset, a black van pulled in through the gates. 2 men stepped out. One of them was Daniel Reyes. Rachel raised her camera and zoomed in. Evelyn's hand gripped the door handle. "Do you think she's inside?" Evelyn asked. "I don't know. But if they've already moved her there..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They couldn't risk being seen, so they left before dark, returning to Rachel's apartment with more questions than answers. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She saw the lines in her face, the cracks in her skin, the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. She saw a mother, a fighter, and she made a promise. "I'm coming for you, baby. I don't care what it takes." If you're enjoying this story, leave your like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our content. 2 days later, Evelyn was standing at the edge of a forest, staring at the iron gates of the Silver Veil Foundation, her heart thudding like a war drum inside her chest. They had a plan. Not a perfect one, not even a safe one, but it was the only thing standing between her daughter and the nightmare that had swallowed her life whole. Rachel had pulled every string she had left. Through a friend at the state licensing board, she obtained a fake ID and a forged visitor badge under the name of Dr. Hannah Lorenz, a trauma specialist with clearance to evaluate a new intake child. The badge would only work once, maybe twice. They'd need to be fast, quiet, invisible. Evelyn wore the badge around her neck, dressed in a plain suit with her hair tied up, carrying a clipboard and a bag with nothing but a hidden audio recorder, pepper spray, and 2 granola bars. The front desk was manned by a young woman with a robotic tone and cold eyes. She barely looked at Evelyn's credentials before buzzing her through the first set of doors. Inside, everything was white, sterile. No murals, no toys, no drawings on the walls. Just silence and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Evelyn kept her pace steady, calm. But inside, she was unraveling. They led her to a small room labeled Evaluation Room B. She was told to wait there while the child was brought in. The walls were padded, the furniture bolted to the floor. A one-way mirror stared back at her like an unblinking eye. She sat, clenched her fists, and then the door opened. 2 staff members entered, and between them, Iris, her baby, her little girl. Evelyn almost collapsed. She looked thinner, paler. Her eyes had dark circles beneath them, but she walked on her own. Her stuffed bunny clutched tight against her chest. When Iris saw her, she froze. Her eyes widened, but she didn't speak, didn't cry. didn't run. Evelyn swallowed hard and forced herself to stay in character. The staff members left. The door clicked shut. They were alone. "Iris," Evelyn whispered. The girl looked around the room, her lip trembling. "Mommy," she finally said, so quietly it was almost nothing. Evelyn nodded, her eyes already brimming. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Iris took one hesitant step forward, then another. Then she ran. Evelyn caught her in her arms, dropping the clipboard, holding her daughter so tight it hurt. She kissed her head, her cheeks, her tiny hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never should have left you. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong." Iris pulled back and looked at her. "They say I'm sick," she said softly. "What?" "They tell me I hear things that aren't real. But I know they are. I know they are, Mommy." Evelyn's heart cracked open. "What do you hear, sweetheart?" Iris looked up at the mirror. "Sometimes the voices come from the walls, and sometimes from inside me." Evelyn tried to keep her expression calm. "And what do they say?" Iris leaned in and whispered in her mother's ear. Evelyn's body went still, because what her daughter whispered was something no one else could have known, something Evelyn had never told a soul, a phrase her own mother whispered to her on her deathbed. "They're not here for me, Mommy. They're here because of you." Before Evelyn could respond, the door burst open. 3 security guards entered, shouting orders. Evelyn shielded Iris, screaming, "She's my daughter. Don't touch her." But one guard grabbed her arms, yanking her back, while the other 2 pulled Iris away. She fought, kicked, scratched, but they were too strong. Iris screamed her name as they dragged her out of the room. The last thing Evelyn saw before the door slammed shut was her daughter's outstretched hand disappearing behind it. Then everything went black. She woke up hours later in the back of a police cruiser, wrists handcuffed, hair messy, lip bleeding. A woman sat beside her in a grey blazer. "Gregory's mother. I warned you once," she said coldly. "You never should have come back." Evelyn glared at her through the blood in her mouth. "What do you want with her?" she demanded. The woman didn't answer, but she smiled, and Evelyn understood. This wasn't about Gregory or custody. This wasn't personal. It was planned, years in the making, and Iris wasn't the only child they were watching. Evelyn sat in a small holding cell in downtown Chicago for nearly 6 hours. No charges, no phone call, no information. Just 4 grey walls, a flickering ceiling light, and a metal bench colder than the silence pressing against her skin. Her wrists were raw from the zip ties. Her lip was swollen, and her mind was running 1,000 miles a minute. The last thing she remembered before being thrown in the back of that cruiser was Iris's voice, panicked, desperate, calling out for her. That sound haunted every second in that cell. At one point, a young officer brought her a plastic cup of water. When she tried asking him what she was being held for, he only shrugged. "No record in the system. They said you'd be released soon. Paperwork delay." But Evelyn knew better. This wasn't about paperwork. They wanted her off the grid. They wanted her silent. A few hours later, the door buzzed open, and a man in a navy suit stepped in. Early 40s. Clean-shaven. Not a cop. Not even pretending to be one. "Miss Santos," he said, glancing at a file in his hand. "You've had quite an eventful week." She didn't answer. He sat across from her, resting the file on his lap. "You entered a secure facility under false credentials. You attempted to make contact with a minor under protective observation. You assaulted 2 security officers. These are serious offenses. She's my daughter, Evelyn snapped. They took her. He ignored the outburst. You were warned to stay away, not just for your safety, but for hers. Evelyn leaned forward. Who are you? The man smiled. Someone who knows your daughter has potential that most people wouldn't understand. You mean she hears things? Knows things before they happen? That's one way to put it, he said calmly. But it's more than that. Your daughter has a sensitivity, one that hasn't been seen in generations. The kind of intuition and cognitive alignment that suggests something deeper, something ancient. You're treating her like she's not even human. She's very human, the man said, but she's also something more. And that kind of gift, if not nurtured correctly, can become dangerous. Evelyn's hands curled into fists. Who gave you the right? He stood. Gregory's mother has been preparing for this longer than you realize. You're not the first in your bloodline to carry this, but you might be the last to resist it. He reached for the door. Where is she? Evelyn demanded. He paused, glanced back. Safe. For now. The door closed behind him, and 5 minutes later, Evelyn was escorted out of the precinct by 2 silent officers and released onto the street without a word. No documentation. No arrest record. Nothing. Like she had never been there at all. Rachel was waiting for her across the street, pacing beside her car. The moment she saw Evelyn, she ran to her. Jesus, are you okay? I couldn't get through. I called every precinct, every contact. You vanished. They're covering everything up, Evelyn said, her voice hoarse. They know she's gifted. They think they can control it. Rachel opened the car door and helped her inside. We need to move, she said. Now. Back at Rachel's apartment, Evelyn explained everything. Every word from the man in the cell. The way they spoke about Iris like she was a prophecy, not a child. Rachel listened without blinking. Then she said something Evelyn didn't expect. I know someone. Evelyn looked up. He used to work for Nox Terra. Got out when things got dark. He owed me a favor from a piece I buried years ago. If anyone knows what they're doing to those kids inside that place, it's him. Evelyn didn't hesitate. Then let's find him. The man's name was Marcus Dell. Former intelligence officer turned whistleblower. Lived off the grid now, somewhere near Wisconsin. No phone. No email. Rachel had a handwritten address and a warning. He doesn't like visitors. It took them 4 hours to drive up through the night. Through endless rural roads, broken fences, and gas stations that looked like they hadn't changed since the 70s. Evelyn kept Iris's photo in her lap the entire way, staring at it like it could anchor her to what mattered most. They reached Marcus's cabin just before dawn. Wooden. Fenced. Cameras in the trees. Warning signs everywhere. Rachel stepped out first and approached the gate with her hands raised. Marcus, she shouted. It's Rachel Vasquez. I'm not here for a story. We need your help. Silence. Then, a click. A security camera above the gate turned toward them. Another 10 seconds passed. Then the gate unlocked. They followed a narrow path to the front door. It opened slowly. A tall man with silver hair and a permanent scowl stood inside, holding a shotgun at his side. What the hell did you bring to my door, Rachel? She glanced at Evelyn. Something you used to care about. He looked at Evelyn. then at the photo she was clutching. Then he stepped aside and let them in. Inside, Evelyn told him everything. And when she was done, Marcus looked at her with the kind of eyes that had seen too much. "They're not just experimenting," he said. "They're trying to activate her." Evelyn blinked. Activate? They believe kids like her can be trained, sharpened, that their instincts are like raw data, able to be shaped into something useful, something predictive. They want to use them to manipulate outcomes, elections, conflicts, markets. And if a child resists, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Evelyn stood up, trembling. "Then we're getting her out." Marcus stared at her. "You have no weapons, no allies. They're better funded than the FBI. What makes you think you can walk into their stronghold and take her?" Evelyn's voice was quiet, steady. "Because I'm her mother." Marcus didn't argue. He just nodded once, turned to a steel locker in the corner of the cabin, and opened it. Inside were rows of carefully stored equipment, surveillance devices, encrypted radios, old Nox Terra ID cards, and a small case filled with flash drives labeled by year. It wasn't just a collection, it was a vault of secrets, the kind of proof that people died over. Rachel stood behind him, arms crossed, watching as Marcus moved like a man who hadn't forgotten how to fight, just one who'd been waiting for a reason to start again. "She's being held underground," Marcus said, spreading out a map of the Silver Vale compound on the kitchen table. "Most of the building above ground is just a facade. The real work happens below, reinforced levels, private access elevators, emergency lockdowns. I helped design the internal security protocols before I walked away." He tapped a spot on the map with a pen. "There's a service tunnel here. Runs beneath the west perimeter, disguised as a runoff drainage pipe, but it was built for emergency extraction. You get in through there, you bypass main security." Evelyn leaned over the map. Where would she be? Level 3. Isolation Wing. It's where they keep kids they're trying to retrain. But the deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets. Cameras, armed guards, automated lockdowns. Rachel didn't flinch. "What about IDs? Access? I can spoof credentials long enough to open 2 doors. Maybe 3. After that, it's a gamble." Evelyn looked him dead in the eye. "We're not gambling. We're getting her out." For the next 36 hours, they planned every step. Rachel secured a van. Marcus prepped the gear. Evelyn memorized the layout of every hallway, every camera angle, every timing cycle of the exterior patrols. No sleep, no rest, only purpose. On the third night, just after 2 a.m., they parked the van at a nature preserve 2 miles from Silver Vale. The wind howled through the trees. Clouds covered the moon. Everything felt like it was holding its breath. Evelyn crawled through the tunnel first, her clothes soaked in mud and freezing runoff. She kept her breath shallow, ears tuned to every sound. Behind her came Marcus, then Rachel. They emerged behind a maintenance shed just inside the outer fence. The complex loomed in front of them, silent, dark, impenetrable. But they weren't turning back. They moved quickly, weaving between trees and storage units until they reached the elevator hatch behind the generator building. Just like Marcus said, hidden under a false utility box, secured with an outdated code panel. Marcus typed fast. One beep, then another. Click. The hatch opened. The elevator dropped them into darkness. Level 1. Then 2. The light above the panel flickered. Then 3. Evelyn stepped out first. The hallway smelled like bleach and metal. The air was cold, recycled, lifeless. They moved fast, Marcus scanning doors as they passed. "This one," he whispered. "Room 3C. Evelyn pushed it open. And there she was, Iris, curled on a thin mattress, her bunny tucked under her arm, eyes wide open, like she'd been waiting. "Mommy," she whispered, sitting up. Evelyn dropped to her knees and pulled her into her arms. I'm here, baby." For a second, nothing else existed, until the lights in the hallway turned red. Lockdown initiated. Marcus cursed under his breath. They triggered the silent alarm. "We've got maybe 90 seconds. Rachel grabbed Iris's bag from under the bed. "There's more kids here," she said. "Dozens." "We can't take them all," Marcus said. "We have to," Evelyn said. "We're not leaving them." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. They moved fast, opening doors, whispering to children in the dark, telling them not to cry, telling them they were going home. 4, then 6, then 11. Small hands, trembling bodies, silent eyes full of confusion and fear. Evelyn held Iris's hand tight as they ran, back through the hallway, back to the elevator. But the panel blinked red. "Locked out." "No, no, no," Marcus muttered. Evelyn turned to the kids. "Everyone, stay close. Do not run. Do not scream." Sirens started wailing above them. Rachel grabbed her radio. "Security's coming from the West Wing." "We can't fight them," Marcus said. "Not with kids." Evelyn scanned the hallway. Then she saw it, an access grate above the emergency door. A crawl space. Small, tight, but it could lead to the old air system. "We go up," she said. "Now." Marcus boosted the first child, then the next, then Iris. Rachel helped Evelyn up last. The crawlspace was pitch black and narrow, filled with dust and rusted bolts, but it led them forward, away from the noise, the flashing lights, the people shouting codes in cold, clinical voices. They crawled until their knees bled and their hands cramped, until they reached the east wall of the compound, and Marcus kicked out a vent cover into the woods. One by one, they emerged into the night. 11 children, 1 mother, 2 allies. No backup, no safe house. But they were free. They didn't stop running. Not even when the shots rang out behind them. Not even when Marcus turned back, rifle in hand, and told Rachel, "Get them out." Not even when the forest swallowed his silhouette. They just ran. Into the dark. Towards something uncertain. But away from evil. They ran until their bodies couldn't carry them anymore. Through the trees. Across frozen fields. Down a ravine where the fog blanketed everything in a ghostly silence. By the time they reached the abandoned farmhouse Rachel had marked as a fallback point, the sky was beginning to lighten. 11 children sat in the dirt-streaked living room, huddled in blankets Rachel had stashed their days earlier. Some cried quietly. Others stared at the walls like they weren't really there. No one asked questions. Except Iris. She sat in Evelyn's lap, curled up like she used to when she was small and scared of thunder. Her bunny rested in her hands, worn from weeks of being held too tightly. "Is Mr. Marcus okay?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated. She didn't know. He had stayed behind to hold off the guards, promising he'd find his own way out if he could. There'd been no sign of him since. No sound. No message. "I don't know, baby," Evelyn said softly. "But he helped us get out. That's what matters." Iris nodded. He was brave. Outside, Rachel stood on the porch, keeping watch with a pair of binoculars and a handheld scanner, checking for radio chatter. "We've got maybe 6 hours," she said when Evelyn joined her. "After that, it's anyone's guess. They'll sweep the region, lock down the roads, maybe even issue a state alert under the table." Evelyn stared out at the horizon. "They're going to call us kidnappers," she said. "They already have," Rachel replied. "But that's not the story we're going to let the world hear." She turned toward Evelyn, her eyes steely. "I'm done hiding. I'm done whispering in dark corners. If they want to bury us, they're going to have to do it in public." Evelyn looked back into the house at the children, her daughter among them, blinking sleep from her eyes, just starting to understand what freedom might feel like. "We need to protect them," Evelyn said. "Not just today. Not just from Silver Vale. From everyone who let it happen." And Rachel, with her journalist instincts reigniting like a wildfire, nodded. "I already started writing." They spent the next 24 hours moving in groups. Rachel's old contact from the non-profit arranged safe houses, IDs, transport out of state. Each child had their name changed, their paperwork scrubbed. They were sent to families who knew how to hide, how to care, how to protect. All except Iris. Evelyn kept her close. They crossed into Minnesota on foot, then rode north into Canada with a volunteer network that specialized in protecting abused children from institutional predators. From there, they vanished, until 3 weeks later. That's when the video appeared online. Anonymous upload. No name, no credits. Just a woman, face shadowed, voice disguised, recounting everything. The orphanage, the abductions, the experiments, the children treated like projects, testimonies from other escapees, whistleblowers, former employees. Rachel had pulled every thread she had left, and then she let it burn. The video exploded in less than 24 hours. Then came the investigations. Quiet at first, but mounting. A senator's name was found in one of the donor files. A pharmaceutical company went silent. A security firm shut down overnight. By the time Evelyn saw the news again, weeks later, in a cafe under another name, another face, another life, she knew it had begun. The reckoning. Iris sat across from her, drawing quietly with a pencil and napkin. "What are you making?" Evelyn asked. Iris smiled and turned the napkin toward her. It was a drawing of a tall woman holding a little girl's hand. Both were surrounded by stars and light, and behind them, far in the distance, stood a shadow with no face, but a crack of light cutting through its chest. Evelyn stared at it for a long time. Then she reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." Iris looked up, eyes steady. "I know," she said, "but it's not over yet." Evelyn blinked. "What do you mean?" Iris leaned in, her voice just above a whisper. "They're still looking, and one day, they'll find us." Evelyn's heart tightened, but this time she didn't feel fear. She felt ready, because now she knew who she was, and what her daughter could become, and she would burn the world down before letting anyone take her again. And if you like this story, you'll surely love the next one appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and turn on notifications. See you next time.